At the beginning of 2008, the Geelong Cats were considered near unstoppable. They'd won the 2007 Grand Final against Port Adelaide by a record margin, and established themselves as a dynamic, star-studded side that punished teams with direct football that played swiftly through the centre corridor. This, however, is not a video about Geelong, but rather the team that against all odds managed to stop them. In the first rendition of our new series, AFL Game Changers, we break down how Clarkson's cluster works and the legacy it has left on football today. 2008 saw Alistair Clarkson enter his fourth year of a brief but successful spell at the Hawks. Since 2004, he had taken them from second last to fifth on the ladder, off the back of an excellent 3-year recruiting period, which had seen the club draft Lance Franklin, Jared Roughead and Suarioli, snaffle up veteran Stuart Dew and the returning Trent Crode, while Luke Hodge, Sam Mitchell and Jordan Lewis continued to develop into stars. Clarkson took this incredible playing group and organised it into an uncompromising brand of football that would pioneer a wave of tactical evolution in the AFL. The cluster itself is best explained as a variation of a zone defence, with an emphasis on forming a wall across the centre of the ground, aiming to push teams wide and limit space in the corridor. When the opposition has the ball in defence, just 3 attacking players remain in Hawthorn's forward 50, while the remaining 15 form a tight-knit grid across the middle of the ground, pushing the opposition wide to the boundary, where any possessions are considered a lower risk. Clarkson achieved this by arranging his central grid in a pyramid-like formation, opening up pockets of space on the wings that appeared an easy exit for a player coming out of the backline. When the team commits to a wing, the cluster will shift and form a grid that surrounds the ball, effectively trapping the opposition out wide. While the Hawks are shifting laterally like a regular zone, the cluster's pressure goes against the norm. Where a basic zone defence typically concedes the first few kicks and sits back in defence, Hawthorn's zone sits in a high press. The pressing allowed Hawthorn to play aggressive, physical football, with tough nut Campbell Brown leading the way, and the ability to apply immediate tackling pressure when the ball hits the deck is a key trait of Clarkson's strategy. If the opposition instead chose to kick through the cluster, they would simply look up and see nothing but a sea of brown and gold jumpers. When the cluster is executed effectively, the worst case scenario is a stoppage conceded in the forward half, and the best case scenario sees a turnover and a quick return to the forwards, the 3-man system allowing Franklin plenty of space to lead into. This was aided by the side's incredible footy IQ, as Hawthorn's leaders set up and executed the cluster at a high success rate. Its effectiveness was displayed in the stats at the end of the year. The Hawks ranked 3rd highest for inside 50s at an average of 58 per game, meaning their strongest area of the field, their forward line, saw plenty of the footy, and Franklin and Roughead returned tallies of 102 and 66 goals respectively. And on the flip side, they conceded the second fewest inside 50s at an average of 48 per game, meaning the cluster successfully shielded Hawthorn's weaker backline from opposition forwards. Clarkson's ingenuity was the success story of 2008. The Hawks finished 3rd on the ladder and won their first Premiership in 17 years, overcoming Geelong in a grand final where you can see the Cats on numerous occasions attempt to play on, be met with the cluster, and be forced to run sideways. With the Cats confused as to where to go, tacklers surged forward to capitalise on the hesitancy, perfectly encapsulating how the cluster targeted Geelong's direct football in particular. The Hawks' stunning 2008 success then leads to perhaps one of the most puzzling topics of footy in the 2000s: why Hawthorn slumped back down the ladder. In the years that followed 2008, the Hawks were unable to successfully replicate the cluster. Shane Crawford ended his 305-game career after the grand final. Veteran Trent Crode never played again, after suffering a foot injury in the same match, and other various personnel changes meant Hawthorn were never able to execute the cluster at the same lofty standards they had set for themselves. The team that the cluster had once been able to stop, Geelong, dominated the league again, defeating Hawthorn the next 11 times the two sides met and claiming 2 of the next 3 premierships. Although more superstitious fans will point towards an interview featuring Hawks president Jeff Kennett following their grand final win, where he professed Hawthorn's superiority. They don't have the psychological drive that we do, we've beaten Geelong when it matters, thus conjuring the Kennett curse. In contrast to the Cats' success, Hawthorn slumped to 9th in 09, 2010 saw an elimination final loss, before 2 years of heartbreak ensued, losing to Collingwood in the 2011 prelim and Sydney in the 2012 grand final. It wasn't until the Kennett curse was lifted in the 2013 prelim that the Hawks reached their second consecutive grand final, and this time they defeated Fremantle with a revitalised game plan and a team featuring just 9 of the 22 Hawks that defeated Geelong 5 years ago. An achievement that is symbolic of Clarkson's ability to adapt as the game evolves, and goes a long way to explaining why he's been in charge of Hawthorn almost 5 years longer than any other current senior coach. Just because Hawthorn were unable to replicate their execution of the cluster, it didn't mean other teams couldn't adopt a similar approach. And while no team has employed the exact same system, it's undeniable that Clarkson's approach to the game has left a mark on the AFL. More so than ever, AFL teams now employ a system-based defensive approach, with game plans like the Weagle's Web sharing the ethos of team defence. To counter these approaches, sides like the 2016 Bulldogs or the 17 to present Tigers have developed running, physical game plans that seek to overcome these restrictive defensive systems and render them useless. Today, almost every AFL game is a system v system battle, and there's no doubt that Alistair Clarkson's coaching style has had a large influence in shaping this modern brand of football. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to Footy A to Z for more content. And if you have an iconic game plan you'd like us to cover, send us your requests in the comments below.